I understand.
What we worried about this?
I understand.
But we won't stand up for
I understand.
They get killed on the
Come here, talk to me. I understand. How old are you?
I'm tired of
How old are you?
I'm 45 years old.
45 and I'm 31.
And I'm tired of seeing
the older generation than me, and I
right
am too.
And we've been standing around as
something.
the older ones, taking all this always hoping for a kumbaya.
Come here.
Always standing around for a kumbaya. Ain't nobody coming to protect us.
Let me tell you
we got to start our own life.
I understand. But let me tell you something right here. This 16, he's 16.
Oh my God. They gonna kill him next
year. He's 16.
What we gonna do?
You tell me.
What we gonna do?
This ain't the way. Because they ready to let loose. If the United States president say, if you loot, we shoot. You think doing this going
I know it.
So it's
I know. But it's time to stand up. So at this point, I'm ready to die. But what's going on?
Let me tell you something.
That's the problem that we got.
That you see right now, it's going to happen 10 years from now. And at 26, you're going to be doing the same thing I'm doing. You understand that? 10 years. You're going to be right here, too.
But he also got to
So what I need y'all to do right now at 16 is come up with a better way. Because how we doing it, it ain't working. He angry at 46. I'm angry at 31. You angry at 16.
It's over,
you understand me?
It's over.
Putting yourself in harm's way is not the way.
No, it's not.
You and the other your counterparts the same age and that has that same power. Y'all come up with a better way. Because we ain't doing it.
Oh my God.
And I have a 5-year-old son. Oh my God. And it ain't happening.
Welcome back to Digital Dads. My name is Barry J, and we are in episode 2. I wanted to start off with that video and say that every time I see it, it hurts me to my soul because you're talking about 3 different generations, 3 different times, 3 different individuals, and everyone is angry. I am pleased to welcome back my panel and guests, starting off with James Lopez, Fatherhood is Lit, Johnathan Briggs, Fatherhood at 40, D'Anthony Ward, The Dad Vlog, and James Jones, Elevate Law. Welcome back, gentlemen. How are you?
Hey, man, what's going on?
Thank you for having us.
Good to be back.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Great. Quick, off the bat, what's some of your first thoughts seeing that?
Everybody's angry, but nobody seems to have the right solution. And that's been the issue for as far back as we can remember, even though things have very clearly gotten much better, especially if you ask anybody who was from the, who was, in the civil rights movement, like my parents, like my uncle. Of course, I say, yeah, it's definitely not like it was back in 1940, 1950 in the Deep South or anywhere else. But, everybody's angry because it's been decade after decade, and we haven't made the progress that we believed we would have made after 60, 70 years more.
True that. D'Anthony, I see the eyes, man. Tell me something, brother.
Man, I love that clip, man. And the reason why I do is because it just speaks to everything that I think that we felt. I mean, when I saw the clip, I saw the guy in the middle. I was like, wow, he's mad passionate and he's not lying. You got one person that's passionate that's saying we got to do something different. Then you got the older guy that just don't care. I mean, he's like everybody's uncle / dad. Like he doesn't care. He has his ways. He's tired of it, and you're probably not going to convince him to do anything else, right? But then when he brought in the 16-year-old, I was like, wow. And the biggest part for me was how attentive that 16-year-old was. I mean, he was looking that guy right in the face like it was military style.
Yes,
like
sir. Yes, sir.
He felt something when that guy was talking to him. And that's what I think made a lot of people, including me, just be like, whoa, what happened? Because I think we got this thing in our head that, like, these teenagers they're like hard-headed. They don't want to listen. You know, they don't care about themselves. And then you got this kid that's a representation of 16 and 17-year-olds, and he's looking that guy deep in his soul. He absorbed everything. I think that kid saw himself at 30, then he saw himself at 45, and he realized where he was at when he was 16. I feel like that kid's life kind of flashed before his eyes right there, and he knew that he had to make a change. So the biggest thing that stood out to me on there is just how attentive that kid was. Like, he really wanted to make a change. He didn't even say anything in the whole video. He just absorbed everything. And that was dope to me. That was amazing to me.
Other James, let me hear from you, brother.
Oh, I thought it was a super powerful message, and like D'Anthony said, it was that generational guidance, right? Which was really dope to see that the child could sit there, or the young man, because he's not a child anymore, right? The young man could sit there and actually receive that guidance, but the guy also showed him the different ages of it, right? And that makes it way more relatable. So it reminds me of when we're trying to talk to our friends about everything that's happening, and sometimes we get like mind blown where it's like you don't get it. But now this guy is showing you different ages of getting it. And I thought that was really, really powerful. I think that's how you open up people's eyes and their heart.
You know what? It's funny because it seems like that they're, even though you can say that we haven't progressed or we have progressed from 60 or 70 years ago, it doesn't necessarily matter. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because, I wasn't there 50 years ago. The only thing that I know are the things that are going on right here. And I know the things that like my grandmother told me and that our moms told me, but the things that I'm experiencing are right now. So if this is all that I have, and I think that this is messed up, I don't necessarily know if you should go back in history and be like, oh, well, this is where we kind of came from when we did make some strides, because your problems right here are your problems. You know what I mean? So, and this is what you're trying to solve. So what was good about that is him telling that 16-year-old, hey, we've all been through the same thing. We did that same thing. We was pissed off when I was 16. I was doing what you was doing or about to do. Right now, I'm 31, and I'm telling you to stop doing that. And this dude, like, this is it. So you got a glimpse into the future of what's about to happen, which is so dope. So dope to me.
Yeah, and how do you take it to the next level, right? Where it was like, now you're telling them, hey, we tried this. This is where it got us. He tried this. This is where it got us. Now it's your turn. How are you going to innovate? You know what I mean? How are you going to take it to the next level, and how are you going to add to that foundation that our grandparents left us?
It's the same thing that a lot of people have said already. My bad, John. But it was the same thing that a lot of people have said already, but this was just in a viral form. I mean, I've saw a lot of people already say, like, we did that before, it didn't work. We tried this before, it already didn't work. Now you got this guy who made this clip go viral, and I think it resonated with a lot of people.
Yep. It's relatable.
Yeah, relatable.
Hey, Johnathan, finish this up, buddy. Finish this up.
Yeah, I wrote a few comments in the chat as well, but I think we don't talk about our pain enough. And, I think a lot of our elders, and if we're fortunate enough to know them, if they're still alive, they don't share those traumatic stories with us. And what I saw in that moment was a couple of things. One, we need to talk about our pain and channel that pain into action, into stories that the next generation can be passed on to them so they can learn from it. The other thing is that we are living history. So we don't necessarily have to know, we don't have to all be John Hope Franklin and know the whole history, from slavery to now. Our own story is a living testimony of what we've survived through and how we've innovated. One of the things that's important in this moment for me to focus on is that there's so much Black trauma that's being broadcast and, gone viral, but there's also Black resistance. Whenever we've been faced with a struggle, a challenge, oppression, etc., we as Black people in America have had cultural resistance. We fought back through arts, culture, music, institution, community building, etc. And so what I saw in that clip was the trauma, the rage, and the call to action. And it just touched me because we're disconnected from our own stories. We have people in our family we don't talk to, or they don't share those things with us. It was recently the 99th anniversary of the Black Wall Street Massacre. And if you look back at the stories that have appeared this week, people who are still alive and stories were passed down to them from their great grandmothers, et cetera, and grandfathers, no one talked about it. It was just something that no one talked about. And it was just years later, or decades later, where it was all uncovered. And I think we need to give voice to our pain so that other people, the next generation, can learn from it.
Johnathan, I love that word disconnected that you use. And it's, again, you guys always set me up just to kind of move into the next direction, the call of action. I love these layups, fellas, believe me. Listen, I want to focus on that call to action that you were just talking about. And I also want to focus on that word disconnected. I see this. I see the protests. I see people out in the streets. And I think back to the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycotts. And they boycotted for 13 months. 13 months, they refused to get on the bus. And I can't see us being that uncomfortable for 13 months. Like, you hear people talking now, like, what's next? What's next? Well, I hope they keep the protests going, or I hope they keep this energy going. But can we? Do you think we're there to keep that same drive going?
It's a great question.
Sorry,
that's
I stumped everybody.
No, that's a great question. It's a real question. You know, that's one of those real questions where we hope everybody continues. Like, we all have the energy, but we also know that COVID is around, right? So COVID is actually like helping us, where now we don't have to go to work. Right? We can't go to work. Places are closed. So it's easier for us to be out there. Once that changes, will people care about their livelihoods or the money, or will they care, like where do they go? It's like now they have options. Like, I pray and I hope that we continue to fight. But how realistic will it be once the economy starts moving again? I hope it comes true, man.
I wonder what's the difference. What's the difference between at that point, it was, they were boycotting the buses, right? Because there were a lot of people that were taking the buses, and that was the biggest hit. So if we translated that over to today, what would that be? That would be a lot of different stuff with Amazon, or, just buying in bulk, period, buying from, Walmarts and things. I don't know what that push would be, but you have a lot of different options. And I think one thing that's going on today that may be equivalent is we're focusing a lot more, or there has been attention redistributed to Black-owned businesses, right? And there's a sense of pride now with buying from your local Black-owned businesses because of everything that happened with the Black Wall Street, the amount of information is being pushed out now. So I don't know if we have the discipline to necessarily, inconvenience our lives like that. I don't know if we do. But what I do think that we have the capacity and the discipline to do is buy from each other like we want to, and being more aware that there's companies that sell X, Y, and Z that you can benefit from. And when you buy from them, you're supporting them, which means you're supporting yourself, which means you're supporting like this whole movement. So it's a weird, like, inverse reaction to what you mentioned about the bus boycott to me.
Yeah,
Johnathan.
I think this is a big question, because really what you're talking about is sustaining a movement. And so there are different mini movements that are happening all at once. We obviously have Black Lives Matter, but NAACP, for hundreds of years now, they've had their own agendas. They have the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, founded by Thurgood Marshall, doing great work. So I think in this digital age, this mobile first age, with Black spending power and Black political power at its greatest in our lifetime, in history, I should say, how do we channel that? My background is in public health, and we talk about interventions. We talk about what you can do at an individual level, at a community level, at a system level, and then cultural level. So it's the old that adage you hear about, people keep falling into the stream and drowning. We catch them later downstream, but how do we intervene higher up the stream to stop people from falling into the stream at all? And so I think it's everybody, we need to decide where we can best fit in to the movement. There's a woman named Deepa Iyer. She has a little exercise called Mapping Your Role for Social Change. And she outlines 9 different roles that we all have. And I was looking at it today because of this conversation. And one of the roles is storytellers, right? So these are the people that craft and share the stories and the cultures and experiences. But another one is the weavers. They connect the dots between people and places and organizations and movements. You have the builders. They organize. They implement ideas and resources for collective vision. So I think we all need to identify what is our role. I did the exercise. I'm a storyteller and a weaver. That's my role. So then I have to make up my mind, how does that manifest with the resources I have and the time that I have? I'm not going to be out in the street protesting and doing all of that. I did that in my 20s. In my 40s, it's all about more policy change, system change, political action, money toward, causes that I think can make a difference with local leadership, because all politics is local. And especially when it comes to local policing, that's a local level thing. But then certainly, who's in the White House and what's happening with the federal level. So I think we have to just be really intentional about how we're going to spend our energy. I see in the chat somebody who's asking what's the name of the exercise.
Yes, please share that with everybody.
Her website is called buildingmovement.org. Her name is Deepa, Deepaiyer. And the exercise is called Mapping Our Roles in Social Change Ecosystems. I know it sounds all, academic or whatever, but I think we have to have a framework. We have to channel. I had an editor at my old newspaper. She used to always tell me whenever I was basically pissed off about something, we called it the burning spear moment. She said, channel that anger. You have to channel it into something constructive. And that's what I saw in that video. You got the 31-year-old man trying to say, look, 16-year-old, you got to channel this into something beyond burning down stores and buildings in your community. I lived through the 1992 LA uprising because I'm from South Central LA. And, I saw the devastation that came, billions of dollars in damage after people burned everything down, including the grocery store. It didn't help. I understood it and I didn't judge it, but it made life really hard. That store took a long time to come back. What really would have helped is changing some of the police laws and law enforcement resources to funnel back into the community.
Hey, John, I got a question for you if I can.
Mm-hmm.
So is it, so I don't want to say something is not realistic, but I'm thinking at its best, right? Yeah, it will be very good for us to all come together and change these policies for, the police and change policies that happen in the city and state and things. But is that realistic? Can that actually happen? Or is that just like a theory that, okay, best case scenario, this is what happens?
Well, I mean, we had Civil Rights Act of 1964 happen, 1965 happened. Mm-hmm. We've had major laws. Even if you look at healthcare reform, the reality is that policies impact our world. They shape our reality. And I can tell you that it's not a quick fix. So a lot of these policy changes take years to happen. They don't happen overnight. So that's what I'm saying about where do you want to channel your anger. There are some things we can do on an individual level. Personally, I support organizations that help ensure that Black boys graduate from high school and go to college. I support organizations that combat HIV and AIDS in the Black community because we're disproportionately affected by that. I support organizations that work with returning citizens or formerly incarcerated individuals. Because when a family member is incarcerated, the whole family is incarcerated. Mm-hmm. But those are individual things that I'm doing. That's not policy level. What is happening now is there's awareness about systemic change needing to happen. And systemic change takes time. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of time. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to change it overnight. To the question about is it sustainable? The only thing I think our people have been sustained by is faith and hope. You see people wearing the shirt saying, "I am my ancestors' wildest dreams."
Yep.
We just celebrated Juneteenth. That was 1865. We're still not fully free. I have a frat brother. He wears a shirt sometimes that says "free-ish." We're not really free.
Yeah.
But the freedoms we have, are certainly more than our ancestors and our elders. And we just have to do more. It's not going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Johnathan, when you said it's not easy, because I brought up that whole comfort thing. And DeAnthony, you just hit on that. And you said, I don't think we have it to be that uncomfortable for that long period of time.
Not today.
Not today, just because we've gotten comfortable being comfortable, right?
Too comfortable, yeah.
We can use COVID as our example of we were cooped up in the house. We had no other distractions. And look what happens. You take all our distractions away now. The second NBA starts back up, NFL starts back up, all our sports, movie theaters, all our distractions come back. Do we lose our momentum? And to Jonathan's point, if you're not taking that anger and putting it into some type of policy making or policy changing avenue, we're going to just fizzle out. So my next question to all of you guys, the digital dads, is, and I've heard athletes go back and forth with this, is this your fight to be part of the social change?
Is it our fight to be part of the social change?
Is it your fight, or do you want to kind of? That's the question. Or you want to just focus on? Hey, listen.
James said, "Are you serious?"
Hey, listen.
It's funny though. It's funny though because my wife and I were actually talking about this in the car as I was driving home to get on this, and we were talking about how people are recognizing, and again, COVID is probably a part of this. That white people, by and large, have joined in and are, I don't want to say this the wrong way because it's not necessarily the way I intended, but are kind of taking the lead on this by recognizing, number one, you guys have been fighting for hundreds of years. Take a break. Number two, we're the reason that everything is messed up. And because of the fact that we had nothing to do for the past 3 months, except watch videos of Black people getting killed and start reading all these books that you've been telling us to read for the past 20 years. And oh my God, we get it. I can't believe that all this stuff was happening. Don't worry, we got it from here. And we were talking about how, and I'm trying to say this in the way that I'm intending it to come off, which is very difficult to say without getting long-winded. But basically, that's the way it's supposed to be. They are the cause of the problem and must be the solution, because Black people cannot dismantle systemic white racism. White people who are in the system, who cause and benefit from it, have to be the ones to dismantle it. And for the time being, it appears that they have taken on that mantle and said, we get it. This is our responsibility. We are the ones who have to stop this now. And, you got teenagers in the middle of, Omaha, Nebraska, 3 of them standing out on the side of the road, protesting Black Lives Matter and, collecting donations and sending it to Black foundations and things like that, and getting on their teachers, getting on their parents, getting on their representatives. And you have, of course, the older people, the 20-somethings, the 30-somethings, some of the older white people who have been in this fight for a long time, ever since the 60s and the 50s, who are like, yep, it's time to start again. I'm glad you guys all finally realize what everyone's been telling you is true, that, Black people have not been exaggerating or lying or making it up all this time. We have been screwing them over. And, and that's why I say, I think that the idea of what our role has to be in this is a lot more complex than we think it is, because of the fact that they have to be the ones to fix the problem that they have always been the cause of, because they have the numbers, they're entwined in it, they are the reason that things are the way they are. And then it's on us now. What should we do if they do long term decide to take that role on and say, we're going to fix this, we're sorry? So what do we do then? What's our role? What do we need to do so that we are ready when things are getting fixed? I don't know if they ever will be 100%, but as things are getting fixed, if things get fixed, what do we do? How are we going to be ready to jump into things and actually like be in society for real for the first time ever?
Well said, James. Somebody follow that up. Because James, you were like, what? Are we in it?
I mean, I asked because all our kids know is like the social media world, right? All they know is technology. So it's like if we want to talk to them, then it's not a question of how are we in it. It's not a question of if we're in it. We're already in it because we are digital dads, right? So it starts with us as the example, where it's like now from my son is Puerto Rican and Chinese, right? I have to actually sit down with him and talk to him why this matters to us, because there's people in our family that might say, yo, you're not black. Why are you fighting? And it's like, no, we have to fight because we are black. Like, I'm dark-skinned tone, man. If I go to Puerto Rico, they're not going to see me as a light-skinned Puerto Rican. They're going to call me black, and I got to accept that. But I also got to teach my son that, yo, you're different. You're a little bit lighter. You're still seen funny too, man. Like, you got to come in and now teach your friends. Like, the digital movement isn't just us as the dads, our whole ecosystem, right? Where now we're educating our kids, and in hopes that our kids will educate all their friends or the people around them. So we're deeply involved in teaching our kids as social dads, as digital dads.
Well, I think that you definitely have a responsibility. You have a social responsibility, but here's the thing. How you have your social responsibility is what I'm more interested in, because everybody's not like an activist, or everybody doesn't have that voice where they can influence through a tweet. Everybody doesn't have that gift where they can put up a picture and have 100,000 people follow them and say, you know what, I agree with that. So whatever your definition of how you can contribute is, that's what's important. I mean, some people, like if you're a musician, you don't necessarily you don't necessarily like speak out, but you may play a song or you may write something, and maybe it goes to 100,000 people, maybe it goes to 5 or 6 people, but that's your contribution. And the only thing that, and I don't want to critique the movement, but the only thing that I don't necessarily care for are, people that's expecting, everybody to just have these powerful words to say to influence X amount of people, because everybody, you can't be bullied into kind of being a social activist the way that other people want you to. Everybody doesn't want to like protest, but that doesn't mean that they don't feel the same. Everybody, doesn't want to get up and, write a congressman every, 5 minutes and send 100 emails. I mean, whatever way that they're effective, that's their way. But you can't be bullied into figuring out how, or you can't be bullied into being like a social advocate the way that people see social advocates on TV, like Al Sharpton or something. And I think that's the picture of social justice that we get. And we don't know that it's like little stuff like in your community that's not necessarily outside, that you having a conversation with somebody at work and saying, hey, this stuff is really messed up, and let me just give you my perspective on it. A conversation like that at the lunch table, I think, can be more effective than you trying to figure out what are powerful words to say on Twitter. That's not your platform. That's not your medium, but you have to figure out what your stage is and use that stage. If it's with your kids, then it's with your kids, and that's what you do. But you can't just kind of reach and just try to be that picture, that image of activism that you kind of see on TV that has been promoted through social media and things. Everybody doesn't have that gift. So everybody has to find their own way. So yes, everybody has a responsibility, but everybody doesn't have the same responsibility. I don't know if that makes sense, guys. You guys get it?
No, I think you hit it perfectly, Anthony. Like, I think that's what it is. Like, we all have our own ways of contributing, and they all matter, right? Yeah. Because like me as as a Spanish guy in technology, I'm able to go to these startups and go to tech companies and tell them, hey, man, like this might be bad business for you. It might not line up with my pockets, but I'm not going to work with you unless you got somebody of color on your executive team. And that just didn't start yesterday. I've been doing that for the past 10 years. And that'll put you in an uncomfortable place where now you know that people are looking at you funny because you're going to tell them, yo, if I don't like your team, I'm not working with you. That's it's very inconvenient for a lot of people. You know what I mean? And we all do it our own way. That's my way of fighting, where I could go and tell the white guy that's running a VC firm, yo, I don't want to work with you, bro. I know that $50,000 could help me, but you got nobody on your team of color. You got more dogs and cat pictures than you do of people of color. But that's okay for me. I don't expect everybody else to do that. You know what I mean? I'm cool with calling them out and telling them, yo, I don't want to see Buddy no more. I want to see my man's there. You know what I mean? But that's what's comfortable for me. That's not comfortable for everybody else.
Yeah, and I think that's what's important, man. That's what you have to do. You got to figure out your lane and kind of stay within your lane versus just trying to be just the hooping preacher or something, right? That's just not not everybody's thing. So you gotta find your lane.
But this conversation really reminds me. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, don't push it. Like, no, it's okay to be uncomfortable. We all have to be uncomfortable, but you don't got to go to the extreme. Be comfortable, get a little bit uncomfortable, and just understand that your contributions do matter. As little as they may seem to you, it might be big to somebody else.
Exactly.
And that's really what it is.
Take that one, Johnathan. I see you. Go ahead, brother.
So this conversation, going back to what D'Anthony was saying about. People may not be, have a blog or be some preacher and can't find all the right words. It reminded me of the speech that Dr. King gave, the drum majors instinct speech that he gave, where he said, everybody can be great. And he said, everybody can be great because everybody can serve. He said, you don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and your verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. And you can be that servant. I think it's, just get in where you fit in, and I think if you're mentoring young kids, if you're, bringing diverse candidates to a job opportunity, if you're, putting a bug in the ear of decision makers, you're making people, that you work with diversify who they bring to the table. I think it's just the perspective that you bring of inclusion. I think that's the thing that's really important. We have a lot of people in society, Black and brown, et cetera, who have been excluded from participating fully in our American life.
Right. I had somebody ask me on my Instagram page on the dad vlog. They said, "Oh, well, why aren't you posting any pictures of George Floyd? Why aren't you supporting like this movement?" And I'm like, "Excuse me." So my support is only deemed about how I upload pictures. And I said, okay, let me give you two things. And this is why I'm a little passionate about this. It's because, to talk about that kind of stuff that happened, it's a level of vulnerability for me that I haven't quite gotten to that level of vulnerability to express that type of anger publicly. Right. I remember in elementary school, like talking about this stuff always just made me just upset. Right. And being that I like to, share my life and my family's life with the internet, one thing that I'm learning is how to be a little bit more vulnerable, which is the reason why I started it. But that's a whole nother story. But talking about that stuff is just not, I get angry with it. Right. And I don't want to be that angry guy on the internet. I don't want to go in and do that. And that's why I chose not to just post about all that. I'll talk about it my own way. I'll, conversate with my friends. Me and my friend, he did a poem. I filmed this poem. We put it together. We set the atmosphere and we put that out. Making things like that is how I like to contribute to what's going on. I'm not going to do it the way that everybody thinks. I'm not going to do it the commercial way. I'm going to do it my way. And I think that takes another level of vulnerability to talk about that stuff all the time publicly that I don't necessarily have that gift of vulnerability like a lot of people do.
The gift of vulnerability.
Yeah. I don't have it. A lot of people do it, especially a lot of the vloggers do it too. I mean, they'll tell you everything about what's going on, and I'm just not all the way there yet. You know, I'm learning because I know that some of my experiences can help other people, but I need to grow just like everybody else. And I don't want to talk about it in front of everybody. I want to say it this way. You know what I mean?
And I want to just focus in on something. James Lopez, you said this. You got comfortable being uncomfortable when you're going into to a VC and looking and say, man, I don't see any Brown brothers around, man. I can't work with you. So how did that feel the first time you had to tell somebody? Now, someone's trying to give you money. Somebody's saying, look, I want to work with you. But you walk in and you don't see anyone that even remotely looks like you. You had to get comfortable saying, nah, man, I'm good. Unless you bring some other folks in here that represent me. How did that feel?
The first time is always hard, man. Like it's not easy because sometimes they're throwing money at you that could change your life. You know, imagine a VC coming to you and telling you, hey, I'll give you $100K and I don't want anything in return. All I need from you is next time when you need money for you to come to me for we could talk about the terms. That's free money. And it's very difficult. But for me, when I quit my job, I used to work for Random House as a network security officer. I did that for about 5 years. And the reason I quit my job was because I knew I couldn't rise in the ranks. So I was already uncomfortable seeing people that didn't look like me above me and knowing that I was never going to get there. So my mentor, who was actually the chairman of Bertelsmann, told me, yo, if you want to speak up, go create your own stuff. And that's what happened. I got to create my own stuff and I got to talk to people. And the first time I went to the VC people, I saw that they saw me for value. It wasn't about anything about money, or it wasn't about how I looked. What they thought about was this guy is talking and we're going to give him money because he can make us money. So since I had all the leverage, it was much easier to say, nah, dude, we good. Like, we don't need you. We already got 10,000, 20,000 people coming to our conferences. Why do we need you? Like that was the leverage. The leverage was ownership. By me having ownership, I leveraged everything, man. They couldn't stop me. It was that easy. Like I was the one that we did a conference at NYU, 400 minorities. One of the first conferences full of minorities. First thing I said on the stage was, yo, shout out to all my people for coming here. We're usually not in a room like this.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Minorities in NYU like that. And my wife came to me and she goes, are you crazy? NYU is your partner and you're going to say something like that? Yeah, I'm going to say something like that because they want us back next year. So I could do that.
What's the line there? What's your line between like what's too far for you? Because if I'm looking at me, something like that maybe I can see how somebody would say you're messing up your money, bro. All right, some stuff you just have to be a little bit more strategic with.
It's experience, man. Like I grew up in an era when the internet didn't exist, right? So to me, when you were on the block and you say you were going to do something, you did it. So that's the same way I look at tech, where I come in and I say, yo, if I'm going to work with people because they don't have people that look like in there, they don't respect people like me, I'm going to revert back to the 80s, James, that's going to say, yo, if you don't do that, I'm going to hate you. I can't hate myself, man. And I got my kids to watch me. So there is no line that I won't cross. If it doesn't fit, I won't do it. That's it. Like this, this is Father's Day weekend. Everybody's used to seeing me doing something like Good Morning America or Tamron Hall or post here and there. I didn't do shit. I didn't do anything because all the brands were coming to me asking me to do stuff that I do on a regular, but they wanted to pay me. That it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel right. I didn't want to represent for a brand that doesn't care about us. Yes, the money's good, but yo, like my man from California once told me, man, money's great. My family's greater. And I don't want nobody to questioning me or my family. So it took a while, but I'm there now. As you guys know me already, I don't give a damn, man. But I also have things in mind, right? Like I have backup. I got my wife who works. I got my friends that are in tech. I got my property. I got my investments. I don't got money that says, yo, screw you. I never want to talk to you. But I'm comfortable, and that's enough for me to say, yo, I came from zero. I came from welfare. I came from Section 8. Now I can survive off of 50 grand. Yo, we good. I can say whatever I
want. James Jones, let me hear from you, brother. Let me hear from you.
I mean, just to piggyback on what he was saying, I love that perspective that you have there, that, like all money is not good money. And it really comes down to exactly what you're saying is, really just deciding who you are and where you fit in and what you need to to see in order to be a part of things, in order to find your place in it. And that's exactly what we had to do. What each one of us has to do is decide who we are, where our values lie, and then find our place in the movement, find our place in life, find our place wherever it may be. So I'm 100% with you right there.
Yeah, I love that, man. I love that.
We gotta own it, right?
I love that. I love that. Johnathan.
I wanted to kind of connect something I heard between Anthony and James in terms of, there's been, I hate to be academic, but I tend to bring like academic thinking to things. So
keep doing that.
It's been shown that
you
when
found your place.
Right, exactly. It's funny because when I was growing up, my uncles used to always call me Professor Briggs. I was like 6 or 7 years old. They're like, Professor Briggs, what do you have to say? But no, so there's been studies that have shown that when Black death goes viral, it can trigger PTSD-like symptoms in people of color, particularly Black men, but Black people. So, DeAnthony, to your point about not being in a space to really talk about it, you should protect your mental health because it is traumatizing to see our death and massacre and genocide on a 24/7 news cycle.
Yeah.
I had to find the words to write something on my blog about it. I also had to find the words to go back to what Fatherhood is Lived was saying about using my voice in the context of a social issues discussion at work. And, they brought together the team, and it was like 40 people on this virtual call, which is very awkward to have a conversation about this. And I was on mute. The first 20 minutes of the call, I was saying, like, I don't know if I can find, I was so emotional just listening to people talk about, first they said it was the killing of George Floyd. Then people had to chime in and say, no, it was a murder. So let's not call it a death. They called it a death, but they saying let's refer to it as a murder and a killing. And by the time I did muster up enough composure to articulate what I really felt I wanted to say, it was like you could hear a pin drop.
Yeah. 3
of the things that I said got turned into actionable ideas for the next step of some real policy changes and real cultural actions at my job. And I think about if I had not said anything, it's one of those things where when I think about Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth and Frederick Douglass and all these people and the moral and psychic fortitude that it took to survive and then push forward as an abolitionist and as a, emancipator in the case of Harriet Tubman. I think no one's saying you have to be at that space at every moment of every day. But there are times where we have to kind of dig within the spiritual genes of our legacy as people who have survived, what we've survived, to just use our voice to say at least something, and it may not come out right, and it may not sound pretty, and it may piss people off, but we need to be heard. And so whatever that looks like, we need to do it. Because at the end of the day, what do we have to lose?
Yeah, for sure.
We can only go up from here, right?
I had that same uncomfortable conversation on a very similar call like that, and you can hear many pins drop because it was very silent. I was the only Black guy on the phone call. I know everybody was waiting for me to say something. I was like, just because I know y'all waiting, I'm just gonna relax. I'm just gonna sit here and I'm gonna wait till you guys get finished talking. And some of their viewpoints I think that was the first time where I was really like, wow, you guys really don't get it. You guys really don't get it. I didn't even believe that you guys didn't get it. I thought that maybe you guys were just saying like, oh, no, it's all good. But they really have a different sense of reality. And it was a very uncomfortable thing. I got mad emotional. I brought up a lot of points. I talked for probably about 45 minutes. I became Professor DeAnthony Ward.
I love
Don't you
it.
hate it when it comes out? You know, it just comes out. It's like, oh man, now I can't.
I
I
mean,
got to let this go now. See?
I mean, I told them why I graduated from HBCU, Central State University in Ohio, and I said I went to a HBCU, and then somebody was like, what is HBU? I'm like, you guys don't even know what an HBCU is, and I'm thinking everybody knows what this is. I'm like, you guys are really far behind here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And then that messes things up, because now when you actually want to talk about like the tougher things, you have to like balance it and find a way to say what you want to say without sounding like you're crazy.
It's talking to a child, bro. It's like talking to a child, talking to an infant that you have to figure out. Like,
can't give him too much. Can't go overboard. It's like, oh, here he comes.
Can't go far at all.
We're crazy.
They can't be invited to the picnic that soon. You gotta, baby steps to get to the picnic level.
And that's my thing. I think that we all, during this whole thing, we all figured out the distance of that's in between us all, right? Because I'm thinking we were like on the same page, but you guys just didn't necessarily care. No, it's not.
You're pretending like you don't understand, but you really actually do.
Yeah, but I was like, oh, got it. You guys are very far away.
Much bigger cat than the rest.
Hey guys, look, I want to keep this. We're going to do this again, but I want to keep it like under 50 minutes. And I know you guys have had some thoughts, but I want you guys to leave me with some closing thoughts for the folks that are chiming in and listening in. What's your final thoughts on kind of today, action plans, and I want to really focus in on some of the things you said. All money's not good money. True that. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Find your path for the movement. I mean, D'Anthony, I think you said it best. Look, I'm not Al Sharpton. I'm not gonna get out there and I'm not gonna be able to perform and I shouldn't say perform, but speak. And if I'm a songwriter, I'm gonna let me write a song. I always go back to Marvin Gaye. What's going on? I mean, that was a song for the sign of the times. I want you guys to leave us with your final thoughts as we move on, because we're gonna do this again. We're gonna have to do an episode 3. And
let's do it.
Because I'm enjoying this synergy, this vibe, because it's some great conversations coming out of this, and I believe action can come out of this. Just because, and Johnathan, you said it best, having the conversation and being able to talk about policy and having something at work change over just because you voiced your opinion and you said what could actually change. So I'm gonna shut up. Please, guys, leave me with your final thoughts.
All right, perfect. I mean, I'll jump in. All I was gonna say was double down on you, like double down on your beliefs, but also understand that sometimes, since your kids are watching you, you have to show a little bit more empathy than you're used to. So kind of get comfortable getting uncomfortable with empathy. That's the main one for me, because I think sometimes we attack and we forget that the other side just doesn't know why we're attacking, and they don't get it. So get comfortable.
James Jones.
I think that there's a time for action and there's a time for thought and planning. And even though this feels like a time of action, I think it's really a time for thoughtfulness and planning, because we are in the midst of an unprecedented time for many reasons, but for one main reason, because everybody is now talking about institutional racism and saying this all needs to stop. And this is a rare occasion that we need to really think about and say, what do we want to get out of this? And how is the best way that we can monopolize this situation that we have been placed in front of us, and then take action from there.
Excellent. Thank you. D'Anthony.
I think that if you want to give your coworkers actionable steps, something that they can do, I think that you can meet them right where they're at by telling them to recognize the power that they have in their own words. For example, somebody gets frustrated at you at work and they say, well, X, Y, and Z, he turned this thing in late, and that person reporting that up to somebody else, they may say it out of a moment of frustration, but they don't understand that that's damaging to us for a lifetime. Why? It's because of the systemic racism, what they've been taught and everything, and that stops us from progressing and moving forward. So your moment of frustration is a lifetime of pushing me back. So one thing that you can give your coworkers is tell them, hey, relax a little when you get frustrated. Remind yourself who you're talking to, because if you tell on or you decide to get frustrated and talk to somebody else about something that a person of color is doing, it sticks a little bit different. So you can mention to your coworkers, hey, let's kind of ease out on that, because it affects me differently, just like it affects me differently than if I were to say something about you. So that's an actionable step that you can actually give to somebody who works around with you, and it doesn't require them going to, town hall, doesn't require a protest. It requires them to change small habits within their already confined environment. So that's what I think.
Thank you, Professor.
So, I think there's, I agree with James Jones that we need to be thoughtful and strategic. I think right now that for a lot of people, they're in a learning phase, and you have to go through the learning phase before you can do the action. Some actions require more investment of your time, energy, and resources than others. So think about, going back to what is your lane and where you fit in. Think about things you can do today, maybe next week, a month from now, a year from now, but the actions don't all have to happen at once. So I would say, look at buildingmovement.org, identify your role. What is your role? What can you bring, unique skill that you can bring to the table to really focus on things that are in your sphere of concern versus things that are in your sphere of influence. There are things I can influence maybe through, organizations I belong to or churches or my job, but systemic things, like, at a federal government level, I may not have the ability to influence as directly. So the last thing I would say too is, to James Jones' earlier point, look for the allies. Black people are not going to solve systemic racism we're not going to do it by ourselves. And you look at the civil rights movement, there were white allies. And so we need to partner with those allies and leverage their privilege to help us dismantle and have a radical reimagining of what our new normal, quote unquote, will be. Because we're not going back. There could be a vaccine for COVID tomorrow, but we still have the pandemic of racism to confront.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I'm going to leave it with this, and I'm speaking to our white allies out there, and just recognize your bias. There are so many times where, and I think someone touched on it earlier, DeAnthony, I think it was you, where, and James, where you said you're thinking you really do understand, you're just ignoring it, but recognizing that they don't have a clue. We are on completely different pages. So recognize the bias. And at the same time, I was in DC. My wife was in DC a couple of weeks ago, and she caught a protest. And it was our white allies. They were going down, I think it might have been 16th Street. And the chant was white silence equals violence. Powerful. And she got a video of it. Hopefully I can get it cleaned up. We'll be able to show it. But when you recognize your bias, speak up. Speak up. The one thing that I find that we're seeing now is everyone is speaking up. People are not afraid. You might not have to get into a tussle, but I see those phones go up real quick. Like, I'm recording you. I'm just going to show the world how you really are. So that's what I'm leaving you with. Thank you again for tuning in to Digital Dads. This was episode 2. Thank you to all my panelists. Thank you very much, fellas. That was amazing. Loving this. And we'll be seeing you next week, or next time. Maybe not next week, but next time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Barry. The host with the most.